So I'm here with John Hall from Connecticut, and we're going to talk about one of our online classes, the SolidWorks Admin course. John, can you tell us a little bit about the SolidWorks Admin course? What is it? Who's it for? And why someone might want to take it?
Sure. So the SOLIDWORKS Admin course we kind of developed due to a bunch of challenges that a lot of our clients have been having. As you may or may not be aware, if you're doing a lot of administration for a larger account, or if you've got a lot of global sites, or need to do a lot of installation management, or a lot of user management for things like SolidWorks and all the associated products, that stuff gets really tricky. There's a lot to remember, there's a lot of infrastructure challenges, and there's a lot of things that you need to keep in mind. So what we did is we put together a half-day online course to kind of assess how an administration in the SOLIDWORKS environment, and kind of just some general best practices for running any sort of CAD level admin tools.
Okay. Let's talk about the image that you have on there. I think, we talk about who this class might be good for. Honestly, if that image in the upper right corner speaks to you or you kind of understand what the challenges associated with that, then I think this class might be for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're got a lot of server infrastructure, you've got a lot of deployments and global users connected through things like firewalls and stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty typical, environment that people have to deal with, and understanding and getting that up and running can be challenging.
Yeah, especially like working from home, right?
Hmm.
You have a network installation or shared floating licenses. You need to make sure everyone has access all the time. How does check in, check out work? And then dealing with like options files to help make sure the right person has the right type of license. The assets are being shared appropriately, making the best use of everything. It can get pretty complicated pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And another big struggle lately has been with the growing diversity of all the SOLIDWORKS products, as well as things like PDM environments and different types of tools like electrical and analysis tools for sim and plastics. Managing all that stuff and how all those different tools play together and work, in tandem can be a bit challenging as well.
So you said it's a half day, right? So 4 hours
Hmm.
and it's online, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's all online. Kind of allows us to be more flexible for, global accounts and people who are, dealing with larger infrastructures. It's, a really low time commitment to just, learn a lot of material.
And by online, you mean basically digital, right? It's not a self-paced course, it's hosted, right? And we go through the material together, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it's an online course in the fact that it's, available to people online, but it is instructor led. It is fully live. It's, a class that's led by someone like myself or one of the application engineers here at TriMech to, keep the discussion going and talk about how the tools work.
So let's talk a little bit about that. What are the things that are covered in the 4 hours? So maybe we can go on the agenda and we can touch on each one of those things individually in more detail.
Sure. So just a little glimpse into the agenda here and kind of a synopsis of what the class covers. We typically talk about different things like hardware, because that's pretty important, license types and how to control access for those, how to do installations. I think that's a really hot topic, as well as things like managing your file locations, your settings, and how to deploy those to users, service packs, updates, and then a whole bunch of material on how to handle customer portal access, as well as report issues using things like SOLIDWORKS RX and tech support.
Okay. Let's touch on each one of these individually. Let's start with computer hardware, John. So
Okay.
what are some of the things that you touch on in computer hardware? I mean, okay, I'm going to ask a dumb question, but why is that important? Why would computer hardware matter?
Well, there's a lot of information to know about how to handle, computer hardware when it comes to SOLIDWORKS, and just getting a good understanding of what's going on inside the computer, what different things have different effects on the software performance is really important. So for instance, RAM may have a certain effect on how many files you can open up, and processing power controls the speed in which your computer behaves. So understanding and knowing how that stuff works behind the scenes can be really important when you're diagnosing issues, or even just when you're ordering new computer hardware. And with today's infrastructure, maybe virtualizing some of that stuff and understanding how you can virtualize hardware can be important as well.
Yeah, yeah. One of the biggest things I've heard of a lot is people who have, say, the graphics card. They don't understand how important the graphics card is to their machine, and it's not just
Sure,
about going out to get the best graphics card, because maybe, perhaps the best graphics card is a gaming card, and
that's
the
true.
gaming a gaming system is not going to work the best with a CAD professional system, and the reason being is basically just the development between the graphics card companies, say for example NVIDIA and the SolidWorks R&D team, and how they make sure that it all works seamlessly and properly, and they don't have that level of basic collaboration or co-development for the gaming cards.
That and driver support are really critical, right? So maintaining your drivers, even if you have the best card for CAD, right, you may not have the best driver to run it. So, just some stuff to keep in mind, and we talk about all that as we go through this.
Yeah, so a lot of really important things that someone who is responsible for sourcing hardware, buying hardware,
Mhm.
making those purchasing decisions for a large organization needs to know, right? So that's a good section. Let's move on to the next one here, license types and access. I think we kind of talked about that a little bit, but there's I can't keep up with how many different license types there are now with online licensing, term
Oh yeah.
licensing, obviously shared, standalone, machine activation, activation exempt licenses, things like how do you activate a machine that's never ever going to be connected to the internet?
And that's just licensing itself. I mean, there's so many other types of licenses like SolidWorks, plastics, every level of standard, pro, premium, all the different tools that exist out there. So, I mean, that's a pretty broad topic.
Yeah,
Um, Typically, this is a section that's really meant to kind of dig into how licensing works, how standalone works, how network works, um, and then really how to control what level of access people get. So things like, if you want to reserve a whole bunch of licenses for a group of users, or maybe you are an organization that kind of bills by department and usage of the department. So, setting up different, groups and functional teams for your license types can be really important. So, certain groups can get simulation, certain groups can get inspection tools, whatever it happens to be, right? So there's all these different ways of controlling access, as well as, controlling how many users get that access and what timeouts there are and things of that nature. So
yeah.
it's pretty cool.
So it goes a little bit into the options files and the FlexLM portion of the license managing software, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a big
Great,
part of
great.
it.
Good. Next is the installation. So, okay, why not just press install and go? I mean, sure. That's another dumb question, but I want to hear all about it, John.
Well, yeah, this is kind of maybe the most important aspect of this training for a lot of my clients is how do you install when you get over a certain number of users, right? I mean, if you've got, let's say, 5 users, that's probably pretty straightforward. Just, download the tool, hit the install button, and you're good to go. But when you're installing for larger functional groups and installing, globally, there are some serious challenges with that, especially when it comes to timing and installation setup, right? So if you hit the install button on 100 machines, well, maybe that's not going to be super efficient for you because you got to run around to 100 machines, right?
Right.
Um, so this is kind of where we talk about how to set up things like an admin image to control that installation, to deploy it out to groups of users with the right software, with the correct setup, so that for them, it's seamless, right? So that they just do a single button click or even just log in the morning and their software is ready to go. So setting up, an installation that's more global in scope, and setting up an install that might be something that's more automated and configured for your business rather than just letting every user do whatever they want can be a bit of a challenge. And some of those admin tools aren't super self-explanatory and don't really walk you through that in an easy fashion.
Right. I mean, this is a really hot topic for people who are responsible for installing on many, many machines. I mean, you use the example of 100, but I mean, even 10, a dozen machines.
Yeah.
Using admin image is super useful, really cuts down the time, makes it easier. And then also your options are all consistent, right? What if someone is using the background downloader, doesn't know what they're doing, accidentally clicks, install, and then all of a sudden you have someone on a different version, and then you have compatibility issues, and then the whole engineering department comes to a halt because someone used a beta version or someone used the next version, saved the file, and basically you can help eliminate even the possibility of any of that happening by using some tools like the admin image.
And not to mention, I mean, there's other things to consider there too, and this kind of bleeds into the next section, right? Standardized files and file locations and things like a shared toolbox, right? Or maybe you've got a PDM environment. Understanding what your infrastructure looks like is really critical to setting up those installs as well.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to talk about that next section, but I think that kind
Yeah,
of makes sense.
exactly. I mean, maintaining file locations, sometimes, even a one person um, SolidWorks install, a single user, they're the only person that uses it, they can blow up their whole system by not knowing the correct option to use for the toolbox, by using an old version of the toolbox, right? That's one of the, with that database error, the browser.db file or whatever it's called now, getting blown up through an install and not upgrading it or not pointing to the correct location. I mean, even something as simple as that can cause
Yeah.
issues.
And honestly, there's so many things you can customize in SOLIDWORKS and store as a template too. I mean, if you think about it, I think there's over 40 different templates that you can create when it comes to like bill of materials or, maybe even a drawing template or a sheet format or something along those lines.
Yeah,
And even stuff people aren't aware of, like whole favorites and other things. You can create standardized files for all that stuff and ensure that all your users are running off the same standards at your company. So maintaining that stuff, understanding how to set it up, how to share that across your departments, that's really important. And I think that's a really interesting thing that not a lot of companies leverage to its full extent.
right. And not just the things that are company wide. Maybe a user has favorites and
Sure.
shortcuts and menus and things. We need to let everybody know how to save those things and get back to them and use them in the new version after an install, right? So company wide things like templates, drawing templates, sheet formats, all that stuff,
Mhm.
super important to the company. And then some other things that might be important to just a user, individual user, like their shortcuts, keyboard
Yeah.
favorites.
So we cover all that stuff in the training and cover how to set up those standards and push all that stuff as well.
Great. Next is the basically, I guess, piggybacking on installation, but tell me a little bit more about what you go over here in this section.
So it's an interesting one because service packs and major release upgrades are kind of two separate topics, but they're kind of similar, right? If you're going to be running regular service pack updates for your software, just how to set that up and install and deploy that can be important. But I think more importantly, for most companies that I deal with anyway, a major release upgrade is something that takes some planning. So, you know, I always use the analogy of, flooring, right? If you buy a whole bunch of boards, you want to make sure you measure a bunch of times before you start cutting them, or you could end up in a problematic, scenario. So when it comes time to do a major release upgrade, you want to make sure you do a lot of planning, understand what you have, understand how you're going to get there, and then also a really important aspect we do a lot of, discussion on and training on is this concept of backups, right? Ensuring that you have a backup before you perform a major release upgrade. So if you're going from, let's say, SOLIDWORKS 2017 to SOLIDWORKS 2019 and making a big jump like that, it may be important to ensure that you have everything backed up, that your servers are ready to go, that everything's kind of set up and configured properly for that new jump. You may need to also take into consideration things like server requirements and hardware requirements for the end users that are changing for a major release upgrade like that. So, it's all stuff to kind of take into consideration and understand very well before you just hit the button and try to upgrade.
Okay. And I mean, for someone who's in this class, something like that is a critical aspect of their day-to-day job.
Yeah,
So I think being informed and well informed about the implications of all of these things can really help something that is critical to them.
absolutely.
And then the last one looks like the customer portal and SolidWorks RX, which is, I guess, just adjacent tools outside of the SolidWorks CAD system, but some tools that are very, very useful to a SolidWorks user, and they should know about it.
Honestly, I think everybody should just kind of be aware of how to log into the customer portal and get information about the tools, maybe get some self-paced video tutorials and things like that, as well as things like RX and tech support and how that all works. Because I can't tell you how many companies I talk to on a regular basis where they may have issues internally and people are discussing all these different problems they may be having with the software or a how-to type of issue, and they've never contacted tech support and don't know how to contact tech support, right? So I think that's really critical, understanding how to contact support, how to get help when you need it, how to capture issues using things like SOLIDWORKS RX, and who to talk to when you have these problems. We're here to help, obviously, and TriMech is meant to be your support resource for SOLIDWORks. And unless the user community knows about that and people are educated on how to help themselves, they're not going to ask for help, right? They're just going to continue to struggle. So I think, understanding where to go, how to get help, how to record issues, that's all stuff that's really, really well suited to some training and to help out the end user community. But as a CAD admin, especially, being able to point people in the right direction and being able to say, hey, reach out to TriMech and call this number when you have a problem, and log this as a ticket when you need an issue solved, right? That's really important, and I think that's a good piece of information to have under your belt as a CAD admin.
Yeah, no, 100%, I agree with that. So it looks like you cover a whole lot of material in just 4 hours. I think this is a great resource. I mean, all 6 of those sections, that's full of some very, very important and useful information, especially when someone whose job it is covers these critical areas of a SolidWorks type system.
Absolutely, and these are great classes, and we're getting some really great feedback on them that people really enjoy them and learn a lot. So I think as the CAD world gets larger and larger and deeper into different areas that aren't just mechanical engineering and other things, it's going to become a more and more critical aspect of anybody's job as they're starting to be more responsible for rolling this stuff out and managing resources and internal infrastructure. So I think it's a really great class, and I think there's a lot of useful information out here.
So what are the next steps if someone wants to attend one of these classes? How do they go about getting signed up?
Yes, so they could reach out to us directly. Just go to trimech.com and reach out, and we'll be more than happy to help out and direct to any of these online courses that are going on.
Awesome. All right, John. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.